It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. Here again on Friday, Frontline Friday with my usual and special guest, Bridget Gleason. Bridget, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Andy. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So, where are you this morning?
I'm at my our beautiful SumoLogic headquarters in
World headquarters,
Redwood City, California.
Excellent.
And we've had warm, beautiful weather today. It looks like we may get a little bit of rain, much needed rain. So. And you, Andy, where are you today?
I am in my New York studio, and I wouldn't say we're having warmer weather. I'm not sure about the beautiful part, but it's it's not sub-zero, it's not snowing, so that's a victory right there.
Let's just count our blessings, right?
Exactly. So
be thankful.
Yeah, every day.
That's right.
So today, let's talk about marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads and how we maximize opportunities and deals from those. So again, this is sort of been reading online, all sorts of statistics about MQLs and SQLs and so on. I thought maybe we'd use that as sort of a point of departure in our discussion is statistics. Somebody said only 2 to 6% of marketing qualified leads actually translate into qualified opportunities in your pipeline. So how does that comport with what you see? I mean, to me, it seems like something's broken in the process somewhere. If that's the percentage,
it comports.
Okay.
I wish it didn't comport, but it comports. It's hard. I think this is where sales and marketing alignment is so important. And having a consistent approach around the quantity and quality and what an MQL is. And is a company going to choose to optimize on quantity and have more coming through and have a ratio of 2 to 6%? Or are they going to optimize on quality and there's going to be less quantity, but a higher conversion of MQL into opportunity? And this is something that we're working on right now at SumoLogic and trying to figure out what that right balance is. And we certainly don't have it figured out. And this is also something that is not a set and forget. This is something that you gotta keep working on.
You gotta iterate, right?
And iterating continually to find out what the right ratio and balance is. So
at SumoLogic, how do you define an MQL?
So right now ours is, we've got a free product, SumoLogic free. So when someone signs up to try our product, that puts them as an MQL. If they attend a webinar or a trade show of some sort, we consider that as an MQL. And then other than that, we do it, for us, they have to get to a score of 25. If you use Marketo, we score them based on activity. So those two, they get an automatic 25. And then,
excuse me. So once they get a 25, what happens to them?
They are, that is then sent over to the SDR team to do sort of further qualification. Does this look like does this look like a good lead to follow up on? And we follow up on all of them. This sort of piggybacks, Andy, on a conversation we had last week about are we setting our SDRs up for failure? Is we're trying to make sure that the ones that they do get are truly qualified and truly ones that we should be following up on. Otherwise, it's just a very light touch. Thank you for signing up. Thank you for your interest in SumoLogic. It's not a hard sell, let me get to a meeting. but more of an acknowledgement of some interaction with SumoLogic.
And that's a email or a phone call, or what is that typically?
Yeah, we're in process here, as we will always be in process. So we're putting together, really, it's a three-tiered plan for how to reach out to MQLs. If it's a highly qualified, they're going to have sort of one path that the SDR will follow, which will include a phone call, some email, tailored to who they are specifically and what we believe, given what we know about that prospect, their interest might be. A tier 2 would be less qualified and less outreach, a different kind of message. And then tier 3 would be just an acknowledgement, not super qualified from what we can tell, but one that we want to at least acknowledge and keep the door open in case we miss something. And really just a thank you for coming to SumoLogic, thank you for your interest, how can we be helpful, that sort of thing. So not all MQLs are created equal.
Right. So tier 1, I presume, have a higher lead score.
Not necessarily.
So how do you determine then that they might be more qualified if the lead score coming out of marketing is the same, let's say, as a tier 2?
Yeah, so sometimes they'll have a higher lead score, but sometimes it's the research that an SDR does to see, this actually marketing didn't pick up on certain factors, but I can see based on looking at LinkedIn or looking at their company website or someone who I know there or some other data, piece of data, that this is actually a very qualified lead. Or maybe I have a connection or someone at my company has a connection that we feel that we can get in, or we found out some other information. And hence, I'm going to give them a higher lead score than maybe even marketing was able to pick up on. Got
it. So, okay. So you've got your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but you're saying you're still sort of seeing this 2 to 6%, rate somewhat, translating into action at your company. So this seems like there's a failure point somewhere for most companies. Where is that, right? I mean,
well, I think you and I, Andy, talk about how difficult it is to get through to a prospect as an SDR or a sales team. Marketing has their own set of challenges in terms of generating truly marketing qualified leads. And so I think just as we're having challenges to cut through the clutter and cut through the noise, marketing is also. And this is something, again, it's not a set and forget, and that we're really working on the formula at SumoLogic to find out what are the best ways that we can generate MQLs. Is it trade shows? Is it events? Is it Google AdWords? Is it content? What is it that's going to help drive MQLs for the company?
Well,
it's not easy.
Yeah, I know, and I understand. And is part of it though that they're being released too soon to sales? I mean, is there some logic that says, yeah, somebody's got, let's say, a 25 theoretically, they came to our booth at a trade show. For the level of contact that needs to be made at that point, isn't it just as suitable and just as effective to, put them back into a nurture campaign and hope that they engage further, at some point, whether it's content, as you said, one of these things that will change and affect their lead score, rather than drop it into an SDR?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we're looking at right now. In fact, as marketing is experimenting with these different channels, and I am not a marketing demand gen expert, and I have so much respect for the people who do it. I know it's not an easy job, but there was one channel that they were experimenting with, and the feedback from the sales team was, these are not qualified leads for us. There's and sort of, again, to the topic that you and I had last week about the SDR function, are we setting SDRs up to fail? They were not leading to fruitful conversations and it was a waste of time both for the SDRs as well as the prospect. And what we said with this particular channel is we need to do one of two things. Maybe this isn't the right channel, or maybe they just need to be warmed up more. Mm-hmm. So we set that back to marketing. But again, this feedback and the feedback loop and the conversation and the dialogue between sales and marketing is so critical. And it's very difficult, I will admit, for there not to be just difficulties and frustrations between the two groups. And easy for sales to say, marketing, we need you to give us better qualified leads and more of them. And it's easy for marketing to say, well, if you would just follow up in a meaningful way to the ones I give you, we'd be fine. Get your conversion rates up. So it's hard to break that down. That's not a useful tension. There will always be some tension, but it needs to be constructive tension, and the two teams really have to be working together.
Well, and it's really an extension of, and this is, if we look back at our conversation last week, we talked about, we're setting up STR teams for failure. We talked about the fact that the system is weighted in terms of quantity over quality. And to some degree, that exists as far as marketing too, with lead gen and demand gen. Right? When you look at the leads, the quality of the MQLs that are coming across is that part of that pressure, I think, to give sales leads that turn out to be not very qualified or not good leads, coming from a channel that's just not very productive, as you talked about, it's the pressure of quantity over quality.
Well, and there's definitely the pressure, Andy, that there are targets set internally. Marketing needs to create X number of MQLs for sales. And that's an easy one. That's an easy one to game, really. You lower the MQL threshold, you can start flooding sales. That's an easy gate to move up and down. And yet the pressure is very real. And so just as we talk about the pressure that the SDRs have to generate meetings, marketing's getting pressured to generate MQLs. And so I see demand gen and the SDRs very much in the same predicament. And oftentimes the SDRs report into marketing. I see it just as often reporting into marketing as I do into sales.
Yeah, except they're probably, if they report to marketing, they're probably less likely to complain about the quality of what they're getting from the marketing people. And that's true. But I also wonder if there's no finger pointing at that point, that they're still trying to identify. Then it becomes, if the line for marketing, and I'm not advocating this, I'm actually just thinking about this as you and I are having this discussion, is then maybe it's easier for it to be a little bit more results oriented, that it doesn't matter because it's all within marketing how many MQLs are created, that let's call them marketing development reps, which is what they're called in a lot of orgs. Right.
They're the ones that are handling them. And then maybe it's just how many leads are sent over to sales that get accepted. So sales accepted leads. And it's a different metric that necessitates some level of quality and qualification on both sides. If sales is going to accept it, they're saying, yeah, I think this is a good one.
Well, in that case, if the marketing development reps work for marketing, are they, in that case, for people that aren't familiar with that model that are listening to the show, are they, the marketing development reps, selling the meeting and selling the demo? Or are they just doing a qualification that then gets handed over to an SDR to do the meeting and demo setup?
Well, companies do it differently. I've seen market development reps where all they do is, if you have a lot of inbound and you really have to filter out for the quality, they're really just doing the qualification, and then it goes on to either a sales development rep or an inbound rep It just depends on the org. But
Got it.
let's say all of that function is within marketing, and the only time that it passes over truly to sales is saying it's a sales accepted lead.
Got it. Okay, well, we're going to take a pause here and take a short break. We'll be right back after this with my guest, Bridget Gleason. Attention, sales leaders. Would you like to give your sales team the tools to drive more quality connects, scale their outreach, and spend more time selling? Well, you can with LiveHive. Get your ROI. Try it now at livehive.com/ROI. That's LiveHive, livehive.com/ROI. All right, back with my guest, Bridget Gleason on Frontline Fridays. We're talking about MQLs, SQLs, maximizing opportunities coming out of the pipeline and so on. So now let's segue a little bit and talk about sort of once we move further into the pipeline is, again, an article I saw that somebody said, typical close rate on opportunities to deals in the pipeline, close rate on opportunities in the pipeline, 35%. And I thought, geez, that doesn't seem like a industry standard to me, because you've got research coming out of Sales Benchmark Index and other places saying that anywhere from 50 to 60% of forecasted opportunities end up in no decision. So we can't possibly be closing 35% of qualified opportunities, or can we? I mean, what's your experience been?
Well, it's interesting. I have an ongoing analysis that I look at what our conversion rate is from opportunity to close. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking just at our corporate team, which is SMB and mid-market, and that's about right. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. Now, there's so many ways, Andy, to slice the data. You can probably make it say whatever you want it to say. It's just what you consider.
What? Statistics? No, come on.
I know. It's a crazy thought. It's crazy talk. But I think it depends on what you consider qualified, and are you looking only at the current month or the current quarter? Are you considering overall time? There's a lot of ways to slice and dice it. The way that I'm looking at it is just a very simple, somebody created an opportunity for it at some point in time, and it closed in some point in time. Mm-hmm. I may get stricter on that. I don't know that I'd loosen it up anymore, but I may get stricter on it. And yeah, I'm seeing just sort of across the board, some reps have a higher conversion rate, some a little lower, but that didn't strike me as being off. But the article that you shared with me is interesting to me, and I'm curious to see what other benchmarks are, because if they're higher, I'd love to encourage our team and really challenge them to do better.
So when you were selling individually, you started at Xerox, right?
Correct.
Okay. What was your close rate of qualified opportunities to close?
Geez, Andy, that was like
a bazillion years ago, I know.
No, and I hate to say it, like decades ago. And was anybody even looking at close rate? Here's one thing that I do remember, and this doesn't answer your question totally, but I do remember that we were taught you should never give a proposal. Any proposal you give should have a greater than 80% chance of closing. Right. So there was a very high close rate from proposal to close. And that's one that I still push here, is that by the time you get to the proposal stage, you better it better have a really high probability of closing. Resources at that, again, decades ago, were harder to come by. We had to just qualify so much along the process, because even to do a demo required people coming on site, reserving equipment, making sure there was a sales engineer. There was a lot to put it together.
Really? For a copy machine?
I was actually not selling copiers.
I know, I'm giving you a hard
selling
time.
I know. I was selling the computer. Some people don't know that we did have a computer and network line of
Yeah.
equipment at Xerox. So I don't know. Do you know what your conversion rate was?
Not in the early days, no. But I knew later on in my career, certainly.
What was it?
It was about 75%.
From
I operated with
opportunity to close.
Yeah, I mean, I am really strict about qualification, and if somebody was going to get into my pipeline as a qualified opportunity, they were going to close.
And how big, Andy, was the average deal size with the 75%?
Oh, in excess of $1 million, probably.
Okay, and I think that's also different.
Yeah. Well,
because you've got a huge investment if it's $1 million plus. I think in this article, my guess is they're talking about a more transactional sale.
But we still had, on average, we'd have 5 or 6 competitors on a deal. So, I mean, from a competitive landscape, it really wasn't substantially different. The length of the sales cycle was longer and so on, but you still had to be able to qualify the prospect to say, look, this is somebody that needs exactly what I have, and they recognize the value I was able to communicate, and they understand the value of what I'm selling and why it's uniquely suited to fit their requirements.
So I would say in large enterprise type deals, 100% in agreement. I think when they're smaller and more transactional and there's less investment required, and less investment also on the part of the prospect, for you to go down the line, you had to actually meet and have conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that's done in a transactional sale and deals that close where it's hard to get the information you want early because people can get it online. They don't have to talk to you. And so the qualification can be more challenging because they can find out so much online before for a rep even engages.
Oh, sure. But I mean, I've worked closely with clients and as acting VP of sales at numerous companies who are much more transactional than what I did personally.
Yeah.
And we had somewhat the same close rates. I mean, really, to me, the key seemed to be and this gets back to our sort of quantity versus quality theme we've had the last few weeks is I think the pressure on quantity forces people to sort of shortchange the qualification process. I mean, at some point, there has to be a give, right, between quality and quantity, and to me, it starts at qualification.
Well, I would agree with that.
Because companies shouldn't come into your pipeline unless they're really qualified for what you are selling.
I think what I see, and I'll just tell you what I see, is that reps will create things as an opportunity, and they're very loosely qualified, not because they're not asking the right questions, but they've had limited contact with the prospect, that there are more barriers because the prospect can find out a lot of what they need to know about us.
Sure.
Oftentimes easier than we can find out about them. So I think more is getting into the pipeline that it's just harder to qualify earlier on. That's what I've seen.
So then do you have to change sort of the definition of what really constitutes an opportunity?
Yeah, you can do that. I think we just look at it, what stage is it at? Mm-hmm. And how much qualification have you done? So I think what in your and my world, they may be a stage. If you look at stage 3 or stage 4 opportunities, which is probably at the stage when you and I, in our histories, would have considered that really an opportunity, the close rate, I know here at SumoLogic, is much higher. Once we complete a discovery call, after a discovery call, then that percentage shoots way up.
Right.
Because we found out a lot more. So I think maybe things are getting in earlier and they have an earlier opportunity stage where before you and I wouldn't have considered that an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think a topic for another day that we can get into, because we're running out of time here today, is again one of the metrics that is big, I know, in the SaaS world, and other companies use it as well, perhaps not as rigidly as sort of the whole idea of percentage pipeline coverage, and whether that's really a real stat or it's fictional.
That'll be a good topic of conversation. I look forward to it, as always.
As always. So we'll look forward to that conversation. Well, Bridget, I want to thank you for joining me again today. It's been great, as always.
And likewise, Andy, I look forward to the next one.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to us, and look forward to having you with us next Friday on Frontline Fridays with my guest, Bridget Gleason.
Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.